Hollywood's golden age was a time of glamour, iconic movies, and legendary stars. But behind the glitz and carefully crafted images were actors whose off-screen lives told a much darker story. Paul Newman, one of Hollywood's most respected actors, once spoke about how darkness often lurked behind the bright lights of fame. So, who were these stars, and what made them so notorious? Join us as we uncover Paul Newman's list of the most evil actors of Hollywood's golden age. The darker side of a Hollywood titan. Paul Newman, a renowned Hollywood actor, filmmaker, and philanthropist, believed that Hollywood glamour was deceptive and disguised intricate realities. He acknowledged the weakness of humanity and the private conflicts that could not be discerned through the red carpet halo. Newman's meditations demonstrated that Hollywood's light shrouded the darkness of reality. He once observed that actors often hide behind this glamour, but beneath the sparkle, something darker can lurk. Few examples illustrate that point as vividly as Douglas. On screen, Douglas was nearly always the hero, rough, righteous, and indomitable. He represented characters who battled injustice, stood up, and inspired viewers. But the character actor behind those roles was much more complicated. Douglas presented himself as a Hollywood titan, but his personal life was full of scandal and contradiction. Among the most disturbing accounts that were associated with his name emerged several years after his death. In 2018, decades-old rumors about an alleged incident with a teenage Natalie Wood resurfaced. According to those whispers, Wood, only 15 at the time, had been taken to Douglas's hotel room where she was allegedly assaulted. For years, the story had been quietly passed around Hollywood circles, but it gained widespread publicity following Douglas's death in 2020. The claim has never been verified, and with both Wood and Douglas gone, the full truth may never be known. Nevertheless, the accusation cast a shadow on his almost perfect image. His personal life was also complex. Douglas was a well-known cheater in his first marriage, and his relationships were notorious. He had a reputation as a hard guy on set, throwing out Spartacus director Anthony Mann within a matter of weeks, and often feuding with Stanley Kubrick when they worked on Paths of Glory. If Douglas proved heroes could hide dark secrets, what about stars whose drama burned just as bright as their talent? Talent, temper, and the price of stardom. The performances done by Faye Dunaway in both Bonnie and Clyde and Network are still seen as the best ones in Hollywood, making her one of the most memorable actresses of the 60s and the 70s. She was irresistible on screen with her hard features, dominating appearance, and intensity of emotion.
If you ever want to see me or any of the others alive, you must comply with our demand.
Having often collaborated with some of the largest stars of Hollywood, Paul Newman used to comment on actors such as Dunaway, saying that their brightness on the screen could sometimes conceal the storm and messiness of their personal lives. Her ability was not to be underestimated, however. As Newman has said of many in the business, the Hollywood shine can conceal a much darker truth beneath the glitz. But her brilliance was frequently controversial. Dunaway gained a reputation as an actress who was not only a powerhouse, but also one of the most volatile personalities in the business. People who worked with her often said she thrived on tension and conflict, which followed her throughout her career. Dunaway faced controversy during the production of Tea at 5, where she clashed violently with crew members, leading to her removal. Her feud with director Roman Polanski and her difficult relationships with co-stars, including Bette Davis, further highlighted her challenging nature. Paul Newman also spoke about having a bad encounter with her, saying it was one of the most unpleasant experiences he'd ever had with a fellow actor. Dunaway still received roles, but her off-screen reputation finally cast a long shadow on her career. She was never completely excluded by Hollywood, but her hot-tempered nature made her one of the most divisive figures in the industry. If drama made Dunaway infamous, what happens when scandal puts a star on trial?
You can't do this. You can't be a part of all this.
Heroism and hidden controversies. Errol Flynn was one of the most popular stars of Hollywood in the 1930s and 1940s, and he amazed viewers with movies such as The Adventures of Robin Hood, Dodge City, and Captain Blood. His devil-may-care demeanor, his rough magnetism, and his contagious smile made him the greatest screen hero and romantic idol.
Forgive me, senor. We mothers can't be too careful. Don Juan is about to return to Madrid.
But Flynn's off-screen life told a much darker story. Those close to him often said he lived as wildly as the characters he played. His youth was filled with adventurous wanderings all through the South Seas, and when he came to Hollywood, he brought his tastes of adventure and debauchery to his personal life. The outcome was a reputation of excess and controversy that would trail him decades later. In 1942, he faced the most notorious scandal of his career when two teenage girls claimed that he assaulted them. The case became a media circus and published headlines called Flynn the bad boy of Hollywood and the embodiment of unregulated power in the film industry. It was reported at the trial that Flynn conducted himself with a sort of cocky bravado, addressing the crowd as though the courtroom were but another stage. He was reported to have befriended the jury, leaned heavily on his celebrity, and walked out acquitted. Even though he was not convicted, the trial made an indelible impression on his image as a figure before the public. It gave rise to the now famous saying, "In like Flynn," referring to his escape unscathed regardless of the size of the scandal. Paul Newman once noted that Flynn had secrets in his mansion that no one would ever discover, and this only adds more mystery to his life. It is a prompt that Flynn shone on screen, yet a lot of his real history was in a secret file. If Flynn's scandals showed how fame could protect a star, what happens when power itself becomes the weapon?
Don't ever sidestep the wrong way. Continue.
Unchecked power in Hollywood. Daryl Zanuck was one of the most influential men in Hollywood, the producer who transformed 20th Century Fox into a large studio and helped shape the careers of millions of actors. But behind the success was a darker reputation that has become impossible to ignore. Reports from Hollywood's golden age claim that Zanuck made intimate favors a condition for career advancement. He allegedly targeted young actresses, often called starlets, and threatened to destroy their careers if they refused him. This pattern became one of the most notorious open secrets of the studio era, showing just how unchecked studio power could be. Zanuck's influence went far beyond the casting couch. He was known for his absolute control over his productions, frequently stepping into creative decisions and even firing actors, directors, or writers without warning. People who worked under him described him as a tyrannical boss who could be harsh and unrelenting. He was known for his erratic approach, often sending confusing instructions to writers and directors. His 1970 movie, Myra Breckinridge, was criticized for its offensive depiction of transgender characters. Paul Newman once said that Zanuck was the brilliance and rot of old Hollywood in one, adding that his power was unsurpassed but cost everyone around him. Zanuck is now remembered not just as a pioneer, but also as representing the darker deals that made the studio system. What happens when the star everyone adored becomes the one everyone wants to forget?
It takes us approximately 2 years to produce a CinemaScope picture. That means that when the film is released to the public...
From golden boy to troubled star. Mickey Rooney started out as one of the most popular child stars in Hollywood, delighting audiences with his irresistible energy in the Andy Hardy series. For several years, he embodied the image of an ideal, healthy American boy, playful, funny, and full of life. His audiences loved his underdog energy, and at one moment, he was among the most marketable celebrities on the planet, an icon of wholesomeness and hope in the Great Depression and World War II. However, the distance between how the population perceives Rooney and what his life actually looks like started to grow as Rooney grew up. Colleagues recalled that he was bold, complicated, and sometimes difficult, a far cry from the sweet characters that made him famous. His relentless work schedule, combined with early fame, left him emotionally unmoored, and his personality could swing between generous...
His car?
Yes. Oh, this is...
and volatile. One of the most troubling stories came from the set of National Velvet in 1944 when Rooney was in his early 20s. It was said that he was mean to young Elizabeth Taylor, talking to her in an off-putting manner and making jibes at her acting skills. Taylor, who was just 12 at the time, was said to be upset by the way he behaved. revealing a less flattering side of Rooney's personality. Paul Newman once remarked that Rooney was living proof of how fame could twist a person's life, saying that behind all the laughter was someone carrying heavy personal struggles. That struggle played out in Rooney's turbulent personal life.
12 cents.
Here, I got 75, 80 cents. 80 cents.
How much is that?
That's $10.32.
Well, that's enough for two of us.
Yeah, it is.
8 marriages, battles with substance misuse, and reckless financial choices that led to bankruptcy and lengthy legal battles. By the 1970s, Rooney's star had fallen dramatically. Once a defining figure of classic Hollywood, he was reduced to dinner theater performances. A sobering fall for a man who had once seemed untouchable. What happens when a scandal doesn't just bruise a reputation, but destroys it completely? From stardom to scandal. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was among the first superstars of silent film and was able to earn over $1 million a year at the peak of his career, an unfamiliar sum in the 1910s. Viewers were charmed by his physical comedy and sweet, innocent giant image, which made him one of the most marketable movie stars of the early film industry. But his name became forever tied to one of Hollywood's darkest scandals. In 1921, Arbuckle took part in an ill-fated party held in the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco, where aspiring actress Virginia Rappe was seriously ill and subsequently died of peritonitis. She accused Arbuckle of forcing himself on her, and newspaper headlines sensationalized all the sordid details, making him look like a hideous predator. The case made headlines, and moral crusaders insisted that Hollywood clean house. There were 3 torturous trials that Arbuckle had to go through. Although he was later cleared, and the jury even went on to apologize to him over the experience, it was too late. He was already considered guilty in the opinion of the populace, and his movies were not allowed in several theaters. His career collapsed almost overnight, and he became a pariah in an industry he helped build. The story of Arbuckle is haunting because of its complexity. He was not a saint. He gave wild parties and was a heavy drinker. But it is often conceived by historians that he was the scapegoat of a moral panic, the expunged spleen of an enraged people. Some say the tragedy was caused by his irresponsible actions, though he did not necessarily deserve it in court. Arbuckle spent the next decade in exile, directing films under a pseudonym to survive. In 1933, just as he was offered a comeback by Warner Brothers, he died suddenly of a heart attack at age 46. His downfall is one of the most famous cautionary stories ever to hit Hollywood, a case study of how fast fame can go bad and how a scandal can forever alter a legacy. What happens when a star's private desires become their lifelong undoing? When stardom turns against itself. Charlie Chaplin is a huge icon of cinema, a pioneer whose Little Tramp character has forever changed the face of comedy. His combination of humor, pathos, and social commentary endeared him to the world. However, Chaplin himself led a very messy life that was not reflected in his art. Chaplin had a reputation for dating extremely young women who were only a few years out of their teens. His 4 wives were all scandalous, and his initial 3 marriage unions were full of scandals and controversy. His second wife, Lita Gray, got pregnant when she was only 16, and Chaplin had no choice but to marry her in a shotgun marriage to evade the charges of statutory misconduct. Their breakup was the most scandalous divorce in Hollywood, with scandalous charges of infidelity and cruelty thrown all over the newspapers. In 1943, Chaplin got into more problems when he was accused by an actress, Joan Barry, of fathering her child. Though blood tests showed he wasn't the father, the court ruled against him, ordering child support and humiliating him publicly. Combined with FBI surveillance of his left-leaning politics, Chaplin was increasingly seen as a dangerous, immoral influence. In 1952, while traveling to London, he was barred from re-entering the U.S. unless he submitted to an immigration hearing. Instead of resisting, Chaplin had to exile himself in Switzerland, where he spent the next 60 years until his passing in 1977. What happens when a star's greatest enemy isn't the public, but himself? The silent struggles behind Hollywood's icon. Spencer Tracy was one of the greatest actors in Hollywood history. He was acclaimed to have given naturalistic performances in such classics as Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Judgment at Nuremberg. But off-camera, Tracy was struggling with demons that rendered him magnetic and destructive. He was also a good Catholic, but spent the majority of his life alienated by his wife as he maintained a long affair with Katharine Hepburn. The two never got married, but Hepburn became the biggest fan of Tracy and routinely had to nurse him out of incapacitating drinking sprees and mood swings. Tracy was a legend in alcoholism. He could disappear days on end, only to reappear a shattered individual, full of remorse and physically shattered. He was respected by colleagues, but feared when drunk, as he would lose his temper. When sober, friends remembered his grace and hospitality, but when he was drinking, they remembered how soon he would be cutting or cruel. He said that he felt great guilt about his son being deaf, and he believed that deafness was a punishment imposed by God, and that this suffering was one of the motivations behind much of his interior struggle. This turbulence was in part what enabled Tracy to be a genius as an actor. His acting was overlaid with sensitivity and silent passion, and he was grappling with his own issues of right and wrong and self-control. Yet the cost was high. His drinking damaged working relations and exposed his immediate contacts to emotional fatigue. As opposed to other Hollywood bad boys, Tracy was not dark in glamour or scandal, but in a dark, silent battle with himself. He was trying to find peace in work, but he never appeared to be peaceful. Hepburn also notoriously remained with him until he died in 1967 and termed their relationship the most difficult and significant in her life. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Do you believe Paul Newman was right about the secrets behind the glamour of fame? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Also like, share, and subscribe for more exciting videos. Click on the video on your screen and you will love it.